My name is Nick Brand. I'm the Director of Corporate Programs at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and thank you all for joining us this evening. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome George Friedman to the Chicago Council. I believe it's his first time here, so thank you so much for being with us.
Europe is clearly becoming unstable, and therefore we must start contemplating the consequences. The United States had staged a series of colored revolutions throughout the Russian periphery, one of which was in the Ukraine, the Orange Revolution. And the Russians saw in this Orange Revolution the intent of the Americans to destroy the Russian Federation. Why else would the United States be underwriting groups to demonstrate, they said. The United States at this time was bogged down in Iraq and Afghanistan, Mali, and any other place you could think of. The purpose of the invasion of Georgia, an ally of the United States, was simply this, to say, this is what an American guarantee is worth. To look at the Ukrainians and say, you want to be an American ally? So did the Georgians. Enjoy. This is very important when we get to discussing Ukraine, because this is the origin of this ongoing struggle in the Ukraine that won't end very soon. It also returned Europe, or at least part of it, to the recognition that the Russian question had not been settled. It had simply been posed in a new and different way. Last week, 10 days ago, General Hodges, Commander U.S. Army Europe, visited Ukraine. He announced that U.S. trainers would now officially be coming, not just unofficially coming. He actually pinned medals on Ukrainian fighters, which by protocol of the military is not the way. Foreigners don't get to pin on, medals, but he did, showing that this was his army. He then left and in the Baltics announced that the United States would be pre-positioning armor, artillery, and other equipment in the Baltics, Poland, Romania, and Bulgaria, which is a very interesting point. So the United States, and now yesterday the United States announced that it would be sending weapons. Tonight, of course, they denied it, but they are. The weapons will go. In all of this, the United States has acted outside the context of NATO. The point is that the United States is prepared to create a cordon sanitaire around Russia. Russia knows it. Russia believes that the United States intends to break the Russian Federation. I think that, as Peter Lorre put it, we don't want to kill you, we just want to hurt you a little bit. Either way, we are back in the old game. And if you go ask a Pole or a Hungarian or a Romanian, I said in the book that the Ukrainian crisis would blow about 2015. I also said that I expected Russia to begin disintegrating around 2020. I may have given them too much time. In looking at the Russians, I don't think they can survive. The one thing that I'm proudest of is that I did say that the United States would remain the dominant power and recover the fastest from the 2008. It wasn't 2008 yet, but the meltdown was clearly coming.
All right, next question, please.
As to the relationship to the United States, we no longer have a relationship with Europe. We have a relationship with Romania, we have a relationship with France. There is no Europe to have a relationship with. The primordial interest of the United States, over which for a century we have fought wars, the First, Second Cold War, has been the relationship between Germany and Russia, because united they are the only force that could threaten us, and to make sure that that doesn't happen. I say this as a possible victim of Islamic terrorism. It will happen. Even if we devote all of our efforts to preventing it, we will fail. Therefore, if we do what we did in the decade after 9/11, which is utterly concentrate on that issue to the exclusion of all else, so that our army can't fight unless it has sand under its feet. It's just not used to it. There are much larger dangers to the United States out there. The United States has a fundamental interest. It controls all the oceans of the world. No power has ever done that. Because of that, we get to invade people and they don't get to invade us. It's a very nice thing. The policy that I would recommend is the one that Ronald Reagan adopted toward Iran and Iraq. He funded both sides so they would fight each other and not fight us. This was cynical. It was certainly not moral. It worked. And this is the point. The United States cannot occupy Eurasia. The moment the first boot sets the ground, the demographic differential is we are totally outnumbered. We can defeat an army. We cannot occupy Iraq. The idea that 130,000 men would occupy a country of 25 million, well, the ratio in New York of cops to citizens was greater than we had deployed in Iraq. So we don't have the ability to go across, but we do have the ability to first support various contending powers so they concentrate in themselves with political support, some economic support, military support, advisors, and in extremis do what we did in Japan, in Vietnam, in Iraq, and in Afghanistan, spoiling attacks. The spoiling attack is not intended to defeat the enemy. It's intended to throw him off balance. Britain didn't occupy India. It took various Indian states and turned them against each other and provided some British officers for an Indian army. So empires that are directly governed by the empire, like the Nazi Empire, fail. No one has that much power. You have to have a level of cleverness. However, our problem is not yet that. I suspect the euro will survive, but I also suspect that somewhere in Europe there's a building that houses the offices of the League of Nations, which was never quite abolished, and I'm sure it still functions.
Is it in a U.S. interest to dispense with Russia as a European power?
With Russia as a European power?
Yes. I'm just curious, how do you foresee the architecture once it implodes? What will happen? It's a frightening scenario. Can you tell us a bit more?
Well, remember the structure of Europe. From St. Petersburg to Rostov, you draw a line. To the west of it is the European peninsula. To the east is Russia. No one has ever permanently occupied Russia. But Russia has always moved westward. Now it's its furthest point east. The line, incidentally, is roughly the border of the Baltics, Belarus, and Ukraine. The question on the table for the Russians is, will they retain a buffer zone that's at least neutral? Or will the West penetrate so far in the Ukraine that they're 70 miles away from Stalingrad and 300 miles away from Moscow? For Russia, the status of Ukraine is an existential threat. And the Russians cannot let go. For the United States, in the event that Russia holds onto the Ukraine, where will it stop? Therefore, it's not an accident that General Hodges, who's been appointed to be blamed for all of this, is talking about prepositioning troops in Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, and the Baltics. This is the intermarium, from the Black Sea to the Baltic, that Pilsudski dreamt of. This is the solution for the United States. The issue to which we don't have the answer is, what will Germany do? So the real wild card in Europe is that as the United States builds this cordon sanitaire, not in Ukraine, but to the west, and the Russians try to figure out how to leverage the Ukrainians out, we don't know the German position. Germany is in a very peculiar position. Its former Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder is on the board of Gazprom. They have a very complex relationship to the Russians. The Germans themselves don't know what to do. They must export. The Russians can't take up the export. On the other hand, if they lose the free trade zone, they need to build something different. For the United States, the primordial fear is Russian capital, Russian technology, German technology and German capital, Russian natural resources, Russian manpower, as the only combination that has for centuries scared the hell out of the United States. So how does this play out? Well, the U.S. has already put its cards on the table. It is the line from the Baltics to the Black Sea. For the Russians, their cards have always been on the table. They must have at least a neutral Ukraine, not a pro-Western Ukraine.